It's limitless living. So really, for me, I think knowing that we are limitless, knowing that there's really nothing that we can't heal and release. And I think that if you are ready for a shift and if you know that there's something deeper inside of you and you know that you're meant to do more, I really want people to know that it's possible.
Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. This is a podcast to inspire, uplift, show forth the love of God, and help usher in the spiritual awakening. Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. I'm your host, Jay Spillers. Please do like and subscribe to the channel. It does help. And I have a guest today. Her name is Melissa. How are you, Melissa?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. So you had a spiritually transformative experience. What exactly happened that transformed you spiritually?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I'll try to make it as as quick as possible. It was a pretty powerful experience. So on kind of the physical human side of it, I had an anaphylactic reaction. So it was an allergic reaction. And this is actually very relevant because of what happens after. But I was deathly allergic to garlic and actually to a few things. But in this moment, I actually had a really severe reaction to garlic. I was actually in my master's program, and my professor, who didn't know, had eaten some garlic and it was in his breath. And that's how sensitive I was to it. He actually leaned down to say something to me, and the garlic hit me. And before I could reach for my EpiPen, like my throat closed, I collapsed. It was pretty bad. My friend tried to get my EpiPen and inject me. She couldn't do it in time, and essentially my heart stopped. So I was actually gone for 5 minutes. So that was kind of on the physical realm. And then what I experienced was just something that I always say it's like indescribable. I always feel like I can't quite do it justice, but I will try. So I remember feeling this feeling of almost impending doom in the physical. I was in my body and I could feel this intense pain. I couldn't breathe and I felt immense fear. And I felt like everything was just, it was almost like I knew. And then there was this almost beautiful moment of just taking kind of a gasping breath for air. And I just said, let go. Like that, just it was just this like, okay, it's gonna be okay somehow. And I just let go. And I remember this feeling of just floating. Like I could just feel myself floating. But what was interesting is I could see my body, like my physical, lifeless body on the floor. And for a moment, and this is always really hard to describe, but I could feel sadness, but it was almost like it wasn't my sadness. Like I could feel my friends and my professor and everyone, gathered around my body. And I could feel this sadness. I could feel this fear. And it was for about a few seconds. And then all of a sudden that disappeared. And all it was just light. Like that's all I saw was just light. And it was this beautiful, and it's kind of funny that the light's coming through the window and it's it's almost like that light. But it was this really bright, translucent white light, like the brightest white light I've ever seen or experienced. And it was like I was the light and the light was all around me, and it was part of me, it was outside of me, but it was also just this beautiful experience. And I remember feeling this floating, right? But I wasn't in my body anymore. It was just like I was just this light that was floating up. And the floating went on for a while, and then all of a sudden I stopped, And I'm in like the best way I could describe it is what we imagine, I guess, is like the cosmos. Like that's what it looked like. I could see almost like dark, but it was beautiful because when we talk about duality, right, and we talk about dark and light, um, I could see and feel both, and yet they were connected. And so it was this really beautiful experience of being in the light and then also seeing almost like this cosmos all around me. And I could see stars, I could see planets. So I just saw these threads of connection. Like it almost looked like golden energy threads connecting me to every single star, every planet, and every being on Earth. And it was for the first time. I mean, I had read a lot of spiritual texts and but it was just this true understanding. Like it was like I was embodying the knowledge that we are one and that we are all connected. And it was such a just a really powerful and really beautiful experience in that moment. And then I saw my grandparents, who were two of the most important people in my life, and they had passed quite a bit before. And then my best friend, who had passed quite a few years before that. And it was, it's always hard to describe because people always ask me, like, well, what did they look like? How did you know it was them? Because it wasn't like them in their human form. But it was just this knowing, right? There was no verbal communication
Mm-hmm.
happening. There was no voices. It was just these beings, and I knew that it was them. And they were calling me, they were inviting me. They were actually like they almost said like you can come. But there was this understanding in that moment that I had a choice. Like that's what it felt like. It felt very much like I could go with them and I also couldn't. Like I could make that decision. And then I just kind of saw them at a distance. There was also this is an interesting one because this is kind of different from like what I've heard other people's accounts, but I saw this like golden brick wall is the best description that I can give it. And it was shimmering, it was shining, it was bright, and it looked like this like beautiful, just almost gateway, I guess, but it was like a wall. And it felt like I was being invited to go through it. But I also just kind of stayed put, like I was just floating. And then after a little bit, I this is where I always say like I basically felt like I came face to face with the creator, whatever, whoever your belief is. But it was really, really, really powerful because I felt this touch on either side of me. And I saw almost like angel wings. Like I felt like two angelic presences standing on either side of me. And then all of a sudden, I was engulfed in this really, 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 really bright light. And it was just the most incredible feeling of unconditional love and peace that I ever felt in my entire experience. And I felt so embraced and just so truly accepted and so loved. And I remember this feeling of, okay, I just want to be here. I want to be in this forever. And then I was given a really powerful message. And this sounds kind of funny, but it was almost like a like a montage is the best way I can describe it. Like if you imagine that there was like a screen in front of me, although of course it was more just in my experience. But I saw flashes of moments in my life when I had made a difference in people's lives. And I was shown how I impacted people. And I mean, just ways that I never would have imagined, or people that I never thought I had made a difference in their life. And then the message came really, really clear, and it was just a few words. But what I was told was, you have a mission on Earth. You still have a mission to complete. And then I was told, you are a love activator. And I didn't even know what that meant at the time. Like, I was like, what on earth does that even mean? But I remember taking it in, and it almost felt like a soul punch and not a gut punch, but in a really beautiful way, though. It was almost like if I had been searching for this answer or this like, just like my purpose, like, and there it was. And even though I had no idea what it meant, it felt really powerful. And I remember kind of hearing it and taking it in, and then almost like accepting it, like basically like saying, okay, and that was it. And then all of a sudden I'm waking up in the hospital and it was crazy. I mean, it was just this really, really beautiful and really powerful experience. And I'm gonna pause there in case you have any questions about that. And then yeah, I'm
Yeah,
happy to.
so because you talked about a spiritually transformative experience, but it sounds like you had a full near-death experience and it was pretty in depth.
Oh yes, 100,000%.
Mm.
Yes, it was definitely a full near-death experience. And I mean, it completely transformed me in so many ways. Because after I came back, I mentioned my allergies, right? Well,
Mhm.
before this experience, I had very, very severe anaphylactic allergies, but to a point where I couldn't go to restaurants. I couldn't go to people's houses for dinner. I couldn't attend social events because I was so deathly allergic to these things. Like garlic was probably my biggest allergy, and it is in everything. And it was an airborne allergy, which meant that it didn't matter whether I ate it or not. It was like if there was any particle in the air, my throat would close. So it was really difficult, and it was just a very, very challenging experience in general. And I had been living with PTSD, and I really had gotten to a point where I was so frustrated because I felt like this just isn't living, this isn't life. And after I came back and I basically made this decision that I wanted to be here and I wanted to embrace whatever it was, whatever this mission was, and this heart love activator that I was told that I was.
Mhm.
um I made a decision to just completely shift my life and my experience. And something in me told me that I had the power to completely heal and to shift my experience. And what's crazy is that, doctors, therapists, psychologists, like so many professionals that I went to, right, would tell me that it was just who I was and that was just part of me and that I just had to accept it and that was just going to be my experience. But I something in me just told me that's not true. And so after this experience, I mean, I had always been very intuitive, but my channels were wide open, wide open. And I started having these crazy experiences where I was channeling for people and I didn't even know what was going on because all of a sudden, like I would be in a conversation with someone and then it almost felt like I was floating again. Like I had that floating feeling and I saw light and I didn't know what was going on, but I knew I was talking, but I couldn't really hear what I was saying. And then all of a sudden I would see the person crying and hug me and they would thank me. And I was like, what just happened? And so it was very pure direct channeling. And that happened for months and months after this experience. And then I started developing more and more gifts that I had never had, like being able to communicate with people's spirit guides and being able to communicate with people's angels and all sorts of things. And there was a whole journey of acceptance with it, but I also decided I'm going to follow the breadcrumbs. I'm going to listen to my intuition. I'm going to see where I'm guided. And I was led to and I won't get into all the details because it's a long story, but I was led to these people who became my teachers and mentors. And they helped me to completely release my PTSD and my anaphylactic allergies, which is crazy. I mean, that is something that, most
Mhm.
people will tell you is not possible. And yet I experienced it. And not only did I completely release my PTSD, where like I'm a completely different human than the one that was living that reality. But I no longer have any allergies, which is crazy because now, it's almost like I don't even remember what that was like. It was just such a different experience. And now, I actually do this work with people and I help them to release what's holding them back because of this beautiful transformation. Yeah.
So it's kind of like when you came back, a part of your soul still remained there. It's kind of like the portal opened, and a part
Yeah.
of your soul is still kind of there, and you can flip over, in certain instances and see the light and help people and do these very spiritual things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I heard from my guides is that I'm a bridge. And I actually started experiencing like a little bit of mediumship. Like I would be talking to people and then their loved ones who had passed would show up. And I'll be honest, at first I was a little bit freaked out. I wasn't sure that I wanted any part of that. And then I realized, like, I saw it for what it was. It was just a beautiful opportunity to help people connect to their loved ones. And that's what I just kept hearing. Like the message for me was that I'm a bridge. Like because I went to the other side, I'm able to access it. So I can access that love, that unconditional love. I can access that light. And I've actually had now 3 instances where I helped someone cross over. And that was definitely challenging, but it was also really beautiful. Just being there in the 11th hour for them and helping them to cross over into the light was actually a really beautiful and powerful experience, and one that I definitely wouldn't have had I not had this NDE experience. Yeah, it's
So, like when you help people cross over, is that kind of like you're having a shared NDE with them, kind of? 'Cause I've heard of like shared near-death experiences.
Oh, almost something like that. So the way that I experience it, so the first one was actually with my uncle, and I remember it was challenging because of course he's my uncle. I loved him very much, and my family's from Costa Rica. I was in Costa Rica, and I had gone there to support my aunt. But it was almost like in that moment, they didn't want anyone being physically there in the room because they just wanted my aunts and my cousins to be there to say goodbye. And so I felt like, okay, what am I gonna do? And then I just kept hearing this voice to just go sit down in meditation. And I said, okay. So I went and I sat down in meditation. And I'm also an energy healer. So I felt called to just start sending Reiki to the situation. So that's what I did. I activated Reiki and I just started sending energy. And then all of a sudden I started feeling and seeing like this connection to his soul. And I started helping him to communicate with others that had passed. So actually, his parents were waiting for him. And there was this really beautiful experience. So I saw this little girl. She was about 3 years old. And she ran up to him, like I saw like his soul. And she was like, Daddy, Daddy. And jumped into his arms and he hugged her. And in my experience, I didn't think he had a daughter because I only knew his 2 sons. So I was very confused by that, but I was like, okay. And I helped give him a message, right? Like his parents had a message for him to let go, that it was okay. It was time to let go, and that his sons, he had raised 2 really strong men, and that they could handle it and they could take care of their mom, and that it was time. And it was almost like he needed to hear that because he was holding on for them. And then when he finally let go, I saw the little girl and his parents walk him over the bridge, and I just was told to send energy and to basically guide them. And it was almost like we all walked across together, and it was really really beautiful. And then the craziest part was after all this happened, I mean a few days later, I was sitting down with my aunts and I asked her if he had had another daughter by any chance. And she looked at me and she was like, "How did you know that?" And I said, and I told her it was a dream because my family's not super spiritual, so it's hard to explain. But I said, I had this dream that he was reconnected with this little girl. And she started crying and she said, he had a daughter that had passed away when she was 3. And he loved her so much. Like that had always really hurt him. And she said the craziest thing is that right before he passed, he was asking about her, like he was saying her name. And that was really beautiful. I was like, wow, okay. So yeah, it's been really beautiful and really powerful, and just things that I never would have imagined that I would experience. But yeah, just a world of magic, I suppose.
Yeah, I've heard of other confirmations where people have had a near-death experience and they saw people on the other side that they didn't know were there, like, a sibling that died, in utero or that died, like as an infant or a grandparent or, someone that they didn't know anything about. And then it gets confirmed that, this was a real person when they come back. So that was kind of a confirmation for you, you know.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Because, especially since that was quite a new experience for me and I wasn't I wasn't really I was just letting myself be guided, right? And sometimes, we question, we're like, what was that? But having that confirmation was definitely this eye-opening moment for me. It's like, wow, okay. This is real. There's something happening here. There's a connection here to the other side. Yeah, for sure.
So you had a life review you had a life review in your experience. Did you only experience the positive, or did you see, like, a lot of people talk about in their life review, they felt the pain they caused others too? Did you have that part to it, or
Interestingly, I didn't. And I don't know if it was because that was what I was meant to experience at that moment. And that it was almost like I was being told that I'm not done, right? Like I needed to, but it was almost like I needed to see the impact that I'd had, because I had actually been through with my PTSD. I'd been through some pretty dark times, and I'd experienced a lot of depression. And I do wonder if because I had a lot of like I questioned myself and am I really making a difference, and just all of those things. And so I feel like maybe it was almost a confirmation for me of like, look, you've made a difference in people's lives, and you're nowhere near done. Like you're just beginning. And that's yeah, it's interesting because I've definitely heard very different experiences as well. And I feel like maybe all of us just have the experience that we're meant to have at that moment, for whatever reason, right? Like maybe it's a catalyst for something.
well, maybe it wasn't your time to experience the negative part because they just wanted you to focus on the positive because of where you were. And maybe when you ultimately pass, you might get a more in-depth life review with everything.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely believe that. I think that's what I was meant to see in that moment. But for sure, I feel like maybe, um, yeah, that's like at another time.
Hmm. But when you saw planets and stars, did you get to see planets out of our solar system? And did you see planets up close or anything?
So I saw it was interesting because I saw Earth, and so I wasn't, in Earth, which was interesting. I was like, Earth was almost, I want to say, like down below me. And then I saw so many different planets, stars, and it looked like multiple like solar systems, and it was like so expansive that I can't even describe. And yet, what was so beautiful about it was that there were these threads of connection connecting me to absolutely every single planet, every single star, and every single being, which is beautiful when you think about it. I mean, I know so many of us who are on the spiritual path, you know, we like to say that we are one and we're all connected and we're all love, but having these moments where you fully feel it and you have just this knowing with your every fiber of your being, you know, you're embodying this knowledge. It's just a whole other level of like understanding. And I feel like that shifted how I approach people as well, right? Like this idea of like a love activator. I'm still a human being, you know. I'm not going to say that I am perfect in any way, shape, or form. I don't even think that exists. But I will say that I have become a better human because of it, because it's really made me see most situations with as much love as possible, right? And that's my intention. Not that I do it every time, but my intention is to enter every interaction with as much love and compassion as I can, really knowing that we are all connected and that we are all love and that everyone is just doing the best they can with the resources available to them. And I really try as much as I can, right, to show up in that way with that knowledge. And I kind of remind myself sometimes, you know, if I'm feeling anger or frustration towards someone, you know, I try to remind myself like how can I show up with love right now? Like what is the best way that I can show up in this moment for the highest good of everyone in this situation? Now, we're human, so it's not always easy. And I think that having had this experience just shifted my whole perspective on people and in general just like this human experience and how we get to show up for ourselves and each other. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, that's kind of been my experience.
Have you ever wondered whether the Bible was compatible with a near death experience? In my book, Heaven's Truth, the parallels between the Bible and the near death experience, your faith will be strengthened while you support this channel. In Heaven's Truth, you will learn about near death experiences and other similar experiences in the Bible. Support for the Bible contained in NDEs, a central theme that runs through both the Bible and NDEs. How the NDE brings the Bible to life for these modern times. Evidence for both the Bible and the NDE, and much more. Great book. Spillers does an excellent job weaving the relationship between NDEs and the scriptures. 5 stars on Amazon, available on Amazon. Well, like when you felt connected to all these other planets, did you feel like there was other beings and other life forms and whatnot on these planets?
I did. Yes. I it was such a like it was such a flash that I wouldn't be able to tell you like any details, but I definitely felt that there were other life forms and it really felt again like almost like you know, I think whenever we talk about aliens or other life forms or like we almost create the separation, right? Like we do with other humans too, but I feel like we create a bigger separation somehow. And it just really felt like we're not separate from, right? Even if we're from different planets and just a completely different culture and understanding, like we're still all ultimately love at our core. And I really feel like that's the biggest thing that I took away from my experience is that that is what we are. If we strip away all of the layers, right, of whatever it is, race, ethnicity, culture, et cetera, right? And we just get to the heart part of us, like we all want the same things, right? We all want happiness. We all want to feel belonging. We all want love and we are love. And I think if we can get to that point where we can really see that, it'll help us to just shift the way that we see other people. And it's yeah, I don't know, for me I think that's been a big piece, like seeing the division that we have in the world and just that divide that we continue to create, and then all of the issues that we have. I feel like it sounds very simple, right? It's not easy, but it's simple. I think ultimately, if we're able to just shed a little bit more love on every situation, it would start to shift. That's my opinion on it, just from this experience.
Well, it kind of seems like whether you're talking on an individual level or a global level, we get so caught up in, well, they did this wrong and, they said this and they do this.
Hmm.
But then the other person says, well, you do this, you do that. We get caught up in arguing about, like, I mean, even like in the Middle East, you this group is wrong and bad, blah, blah, blah. This group over here is good. And some say, no, it's the other way around. And it's like, well, instead of focusing on who's right and who's wrong, you need to send forth love and send forth peace in the situation and stop worrying about who's wrong or more right or anything like that.
Right, right, exactly. And I think on a, like, I love how you said that, on an individual or a global level, right? Like something that I've learned about
Mhm,
relationships in general is that, let's say any kind of partnership or even a friendship, when there's conflict, so often the two parties are, they're placing blame, and there's almost this like you said, like you did this or you did that, right? There's the sense of like blame, or and there's this antagonism, right? And when we learn and we see that it's not you versus me, but it's you and me versus the problem, that's when things really start to shift, right? Like, I have a partner, and I always remind him, right? We remind each other, if there's ever conflict, right? If we're ever, one of us is hurt or triggered or whatever, we remind ourselves that we're a team, right? It's you and me. So we have this challenge right now. And even if
mhm,
it's one of us is triggered, right? This could be the challenge. Rather than saying, you triggered me, or you made me feel, or you did this or you did that, we're going to take a step back and we're going to say we're a team. So how are we going to work together to deal with this issue? And I feel like on a global scale, if we were able to do that,
mm,
that would really, really shift the experience of it, right? Because if we're stuck in blame, and we're stuck in, you know, you versus me, which creates divide, we're not going to be able to see eye to eye, and come to a solution, or come to, even just some kind of middle ground, right? Unfortunately. And so I really, yeah, I agree with you that I think the more love and peace that we can bring to a situation, and the more connection as well, the more we can choose to connect with people and become curious about their position, rather than choosing to be right, right? It's going to really, really shift the entire experience. And it's crazy when you think about individual problems, right? Like, they actually grow, like global problems are almost like individual problems that have been magnified on a global scale, if you really think about it.
So what do you think it meant, like, when they told you you are a conduit of love or connector of love? What do you think that means now for you? How do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that question. So one of the things that I realized, and I think I'm still figuring out all the ins and outs of it, and still I'm still staying open to it expanding and becoming clearer and clearer as I go on this journey. But what has really come up for me is that one of the things that I've always loved, even as a kid, like I was that kid that would talk to everybody on planes, trains, buses, like, and I've always loved hearing people's stories. And one of the big things that I love doing is holding space for people. but to a point where you're holding space with so much love and curiosity that they feel seen, they feel heard, and then something shifts in them. And one of the things that I do now, as a trauma release specialist, like I work with people to help them to see their own inner magic. And so it's almost like I help them activate the love that's already inside of them. And it's really by holding that space, by helping to hold this beautiful space of love and acceptance to a point where they start to heal the turmoil inside of them, right? And I don't really, like, I do energy healing, yes, but I always say, like, I don't consider myself a healer because part of what I do is I help people to activate their own inner healer, right? So I empower people to heal themselves. And I feel like that's a big part of my gift, is just being able to see other people's magic and help them to unlock it. So that's kind of what I've I've gathered so far, and it's been a beautiful experience. I mean, I really see that helping people to find that self-love and that love within themselves is just one of the most rewarding experiences, because when people can really love themselves and they can really accept all of the parts of themselves, like all of them, and embrace all the parts of themselves and decide that they are worth doing the work, they're worth doing that healing, and they are worth actually stepping up and sharing their gifts with the world. The whole world changes, right? They it creates these beautiful ripples because those people then go out and make a difference in other people's lives, just as you're doing,
So
right,
you
with
do
all
work,
of your interviews.
yeah. Yeah. So you do like work, spiritual work and meditation and things like that. What is the different kind of things that you do now to help people?
Yeah, for sure. So the work that really transformed my life after this experience it's called root cause release. So it's a deep subconscious healing method. So we work with the unconscious mind to rewire patterns. So I do that, and I combine it with energy healing, with intuition, with spirit guides, and so it's like a whole melange, if you will, of a bunch of different modalities. And what I really help people do is to get out of their own way, is if I were to put it really simply, because there's people that I know have this calling, like I did for so long. Like they have a knowing that they are meant to do more with their lives, and that, it's like this can't be it. Like there is way more. And I always say I work with world changers. I work with leaders, with heart-centered visionaries, people who have just these huge visions for the world and the impact they want to create, but they're so stuck in their own trauma, in their own patterns. They're stuck in their own way and they just don't know how to move forward. So I help them to release that and to just clear the path towards their vision so that they can actually be who they were meant to be and create an impact in the world. So yeah, that's what I do now, and I really wouldn't be doing it had I not had that experience.
Well, so like the cause release work that you do, does that involve like hypnotherapy and using meditation or something along those lines to
Yes.
get to people's subconscious or?
Yeah, yes, for sure. So it's similar to hypnotherapy. It's not exactly hypnotherapy. I'm trained in like some aspects of hypnotherapy, but it's this really beautiful process. And if you were to describe it in a very simple way, it is like a very deep guided meditation. So I facilitate my clients to connect with their unconscious mind in order to rewire their patterns. So we actually use it's a form of timeline therapy. So we go back to the past where something occurred and we go to the root of the issue, right? So if let's say they're constantly running this pattern, we will find out, well, when did this actually start? We'll go back to the root and then we'll actually release whatever hold it has on them. So the mental, the emotional. So if they have limiting beliefs, for example. You know, they believe I'm not good enough, or they have a stuck emotion, right? There's some sort of stuck point that keeps them continuing to run the same pattern. So we actually release that and we rewire it. So we actually create a new way of being, a new pattern. And they decide what it is that they want to experience. And so I do bring in energy healing with it because I feel like the combination of working with the unconscious mind, which is more kind of from the neuropsychology aspect of it, but also working with the emotional and the energetic side of things. I feel like that just creates this really holistic approach that helps people create a really powerful and really fast transformation.
So, were you instantly healed from your allergies and things when you came back, or was it somewhat of a process?
It was a process for sure. So I will say it was the catalyst for my healing. So I came back with this new perspective, this new outlook on life, this motivation, I guess. I just this drive. And I also had all these gifts that were opening up. And then I was just being shown, I was being led, and I allowed myself to be led for the first time in my life, probably. And so rather than fighting it, right, I was actually allowing myself. And so I was being led to the right people, places, moments, experiences. And it was actually this experience that led me to to meet these people who actually created this method, the root cause release, and they were the ones who helped me to release it. However, I will say that I am so sure that if I had met them before this experience, I don't think I would have been ready to let it go and to do the work.
Hmm.
And I finally did it because I knew, like, I knew it's time. Enough is enough. Like, I have important work to do and I can't let something like this hold me back anymore. And so it was almost like I just completely took apart this identity that I had been running for so long. And I decided I'm not going to identify with this anymore. This isn't who I am. And it was almost like that created such ease. Like, it was so simple to then let it go. And I feel like that's something I've learned with this work, is that half the battle is actually choosing, like, getting ready to be ready and saying to yourself that I'm no longer going to allow this to run my life. And that's such a big piece because we need to be willing and ready, right? We need to be able to say, I'm ready to let this go and I'm ready to step into the version of me that is free of this. And I think that's almost the hardest part for people. Like, I actually had a discovery call with someone who was interested in what I do, but then they shared with me that they had been living with anxiety and depression for 30 plus years. And when I started asking them to imagine their life without it, they actually told me they couldn't. And they said they didn't know who they were without that. And that was just such a big part of who they were. And it was such a far stretch for them to even imagine what their life would be like without it. And it was just such a powerful realization, I think, for them that they weren't ready to let it go yet. And as hard as that is sometimes for us as practitioners, because we just want people to, to shift, to evolve, to heal, to, you know, I think part of it is also honoring people's journey and knowing that they'll be ready when they're ready, and we can't force anybody. Um, but yeah.
So, have you written any books about either your near-death experience or the work you do with cause and release meditations and
That's such a great question. I'm in the process of doing it. It's taken me a while. So I know when this first happened. So my experience was in 2017. And I've had so many friends tell me, like, you need to write a book about this. And I have started multiple times. I've written notes and it hasn't come to fruition yet. However, that's one of my big goals. That's something that I know is going to happen. And I actually already I guess I can tease the name because it's I've said it so many times here, but I think the title is going to be the Love Activator, because that was that message I received. So yeah, it'll come. I'll let you know once it's completed.
So where can people reach you if they want to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so my website is I can put it in the chat if you want. Curiouslyconnected.net. And so my email is Melissa at Curiously Connected. I can also give you, I'm going to give you my other email as well. So if anyone wants to contact me on there, or on Facebook, that's also all right.
Mhm.
But yeah, for sure, I would, love to chat with anyone that is interested, and yeah, share a little more.
So what's like one final word you'd like to leave the audience with?
Hmm. The word that comes up is, well, I guess it's two words, but it's limitless living. So really, for me, I think knowing that we are limitless, knowing that there's really nothing that we can't heal and release. And I think that if you are ready for a shift, and if you know that there's something deeper inside of you and you know that you're meant to do more, I really want people to know that it's possible. It's really possible. I really truly believe that. I've seen so many people turn their life around completely and step into just the most incredible things. And yeah, I want, everyone to just imagine, like, if there were no limits, because they're all self-created, right? So if you didn't have any of those, what would you do and who would you be? That's my last little nugget for you.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on today. It was a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was
Have you ever wanted to learn to meditate? Check out my book, Meditation for Everyone: How to Quickly Have a More Peaceful, Mindful, and Fulfilled Life, and support this channel. With Meditation for Everyone, you will learn to quickly and easily meditate, relieve stress and anxiety, alleviate depression, and have more joy, peace, and relaxation. What you will learn: mindfulness, the art of stillness, step by step on how to meditate, strategies for overcoming challenges to meditation, and much more. D. Mason said this is a nice meditation book, even for those already meditating. I agree with the statements that it will help to have a more peaceful, mindful, and fulfilled life. 4.6 star rating, available on Amazon.